Eventually, oh, there we go. Good morning, afternoon, evening, everyone. Two Geeks Talking is an entertainment industry interview show where we interview the creative people from the comic, film, TV, movie, and video game industry. And of course, I'm your host, Kurt Sasso. And we are on episode 366 here today with a past guest who's been on the show before, a very talented illustrator and comic creator, a member of the Webcomic Alliance as well. You've seen his work with El Cuervo,
The Latin assassin. Yeah.
that the Latin assassin. Thank you.
Yeah.
Because my Spanish is wonderful, just like my French.
Actually, you know what? That's pretty good. It's pretty close.
And we're joined today by Drezz Rodrigeuz. How you doing today?
I'm doing fantastic. It's a little rainy out, but I'm indoors, so it's fun.
Yeah, same here. It's been about a year roughly since you've been on the show last, and it's good to have you back. So thank you for coming.
Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
What's been happening with you in the past year?
Well, I had a kid, and that took away all my free time. So creatively, I haven't been the most productive. I've been trying to do things here and there. The webcomic kind of went into a holding pattern, and I kind of knew that was happening, so I just sort of got it to a point where it was kind of finished story-wise, and then I just got this creative burst of energy, and I just wanted to reformat it so it was in like a graphic novel format instead of just like a typical webcomic strip format. And so I've been doing that sort of on whatever minimal time I have, and just doing like portrait commissions and stuff. I've been doing a few murals. Some people have been asking me to do some murals. Yeah, they kind of like my my pop culture, like comic booky style. So I've had a few people approach me and say, "Oh, can you do something cool for my son's room?" Or I got a really cool idea for my my man cave in the basement. Can you do that for me? So yeah, so just little things here and there.
So are you doing it like in your film noir style, like the?
Yeah, I mean, it all depends on what what they want, but I think that's what they've seen the most out of me. So the style I've been getting a lot now is the Grand Theft Auto style artwork.
Yeah.
We're a big fan of Stephen Bliss. He's the artist behind all of that.
Nice.
And a lot of that influence is in my portfolio style, or like my portrait style work, and that's sort of what got me noticed. So a lot of the stuff I've been doing in other people's, commissions for other people have been in that style. So it's comic booky, like bright colors, thick edges, very sharp contrast, that sort of thing. So
nice.
I guess the noir kind of finds its way into that, because I'm using a lot of spot blacks for my paintings and stuff. So
It's funny. I speaking of in-game artwork, I played Infamous Second Son actually, and I got hooked on spray paint. Not sniffing spray paint, like actually working with spray paint, and it's a freaky medium. I have to admit.
It's a tough medium, yeah. If you you have to learn a lot of control, and I just don't have it. I'm just squirt like all over the place. I don't care, right? But I've seen some really, really cool stuff, and I think if you have a background in airbrushing, it helps because you understand the control behind the aerosol.
Spray, yeah.
And I think there's tips, aren't there? Like for finer controls?
I think there is. I've just been using some standard stuff because there was a bunch of spray paint from Liquitex on sale, and I was like, okay, I'm just going to grab a whole bunch. So I started putting some concepts, some ideas I had together, and kind of doing more stencil type stuff here and there, and looking at a few videos online, and some of the stuff is simple, but it's pretty interesting, the mixtures and the techniques you can use with the aspect of that medium. So I want to explore it more, but it's kind of more of a let's see what I can do with these colors type.
Yeah. Thing. Well, I had a buddy in college, and he used to do graffiti art, and he had this. It was like a little canvas bag that he would pull out, and there was all these like strange like stainless steel tips,
Mm-hmm.
and so I don't know if they plug into like the nozzle somehow, but he showed me all that, and he says, oh yeah, it's for finer control and whatnot. But he was all in airbrushing and all that, all those weird things. I didn't have the patience for that sort of stuff, so.
Well, it's being. Okay, that was odd.
Being cars flying by.
No, I don't know if it was feedback or what from the rain outside, but whatever. Moving on. I don't know. It's kind of interesting the varying mediums that you can work with and use. Like I just learned oil painting myself this year.
Tough.
So, well, the thing in the background here was just oil, and I had a blast with it, and so I'm actually going to not really focus, but do more concept work like that. I think for the next few years, anyhow. So.
Oh wow, in oil. Oof, that's
yeah.
That's ambitious. That's.
Oh, I pulled off a 90 in it, so I mean.
Nice, good. And I mean, if you enjoy it, then by all means, go nuts. And the few oil paintings I've done have been they're just small things, like maybe 8.5 by 11 or 8 by 10. Mm-hmm. I found that to take a really long time, but it was fun. Like, it's very relaxing, and you learn how to work with the paint. But for me, I like seeing tangible results like really quickly. So that's why I work digitally, because you can kind of mimic the same effects that you can get with oil. It's just when you actually produce a piece, like, all you get is prints, right?
Right.
But, kudos for you, man. That's.
But I've loved your illustration style, just because you have a unique style that I rarely see. It's traditional compared to the cleaner stuff of the veterans, so to speak, in our area. I just like your overall style, because it's different. It's something that you can say, okay, I know that because it's this person's work, and it's very, very recognizable in your regard.
Well, I had, like, a lot of influences growing up, and so guys like Mike Mignola and Frank Miller, they use a lot of spot blacks in their work, and I find that the shadows and the contrast, they tell a deeper story, and obviously you're going to use it for certain stories. You're not going to use it for like a strip or anything like that, because it doesn't fit, right? But a lot of the stuff that I'm really in tune with things that I really enjoy, those type of deeper, darker stories, the art style works really, really well for that. And I just kind of adapted it to something that I really, really want to do. So in terms of like the comic booky type style, I just kind of mixed the two together, and it just seemed to work. So that's why I have a lot of really deep contrast in my work, because it's kind of a blend of all the stuff that I like, and just at one point I tried to shoehorn it and tried to make it all work together, and now I've kind of been able to pull back a little bit and say, this is good enough for me. I can apply some color, and
nice.
The image is clean enough that people can read it.
Now, for those that don't know, like myself, what is spot blacks?
So spot black is basically like a large pool of black ink, and like most comic book artists, what they'll do is they'll draw all their line work, they'll pencil it all out, and then they'll trace everything with thicker black ink in order to make those lines come out and have more contrast. And they did that back in the day more for production problems, because they couldn't just go in there with pencils, like you wouldn't be able to see anything, right? And the spot blacks came in as a way of introducing like shading or a depth, or it's just like texture, basically. Okay. And there's some artists that use it very sparingly, and there's some artists that use it very heavily. And the ones that use it very heavily, they rely on it more for creating mood and shadow, and you don't see it too often in comics, just because it's most comics are a color-based medium, right? So the more color that you add into it, the less emphasis that contrast, that black and white contrast has.
Okay.
But you see it a lot in like the old pulp style, like those stories, sometimes they'll have illustrations, and they'll have like heavy spot blacks in there, and it's just to create that mood of darkness and versus light, that sort of thing.
It's probably when someone accidentally spilt the inkwell onto the page and it just turned out like that.
Well, sometimes you gotta make do with what you have. What is it? Bob Rossi's happy accidents, right?
Yeah. So just a happy little accident.
That's right.
Happy little tree and little fluffy cloud here.
Yeah, little fluffy.
Oh gosh, now I gotta rewatch his stuff.
Hey man, that guy's brilliant. Like we rag on him because he's kind of a happy-go-lucky guy, but you learn a lot from him.
Well, if you ever have you ever seen the epic rap battles of history?
I think that's the one where they have the actors, like one guy's like Abe Lincoln and the other guy's
right.
So yeah, I think so.
They had Bob Ross versus Pablo Picasso.
Oh God.
It was kind of funny, but it's like it was some of the things that only an artist would know.
Yeah.
It was like very niche.
Yeah, caters to like the art geek.
Yeah, exactly.
Art school. Yeah.
Well, let's talk a little bit about yourself here. When you think back on what you've done in your life, how would you categorize your muse?
Wow. That's tough because for me it changes. Like some days I get inspired by just going for a walk, and other days I get inspired by watching a movie. I think now that I'm older and I have a kid, I'm not in this head frame where I care to do things that are very dark and dramatic and evil, and I want to explore things that are a little bit more I guess like lighter for humanity. I don't know how to really describe that, but I think it all depends on where you are at a certain time in your life and how you're feeling. And I know when I was going through college, I was going through a rough period, like just kind of mentally, and a lot of my stuff was very depressing and dark, and that sort of made its way into the comics that I was working on time. And these are all things that I've sort of kept close to the vest, because it's like some of this stuff's personal, and some people won't get it, and it's too dark and it's too depressing, and I just sort of put it away. And then things started getting better. I got married and started getting happier, and the work sort of evolves from there. So in terms of muses, I mean, I don't really rely on one or two things to like kind of drive my creativity. I just like to soak everything in, and I think that's why I have such a hard time focusing in on doing one thing like illustration or comics or sculpture or whatever, because I think a lot of it has to do with the fact that there's no desperation on my part. So I have a full-time job, I love it, and I don't see myself leaving here at any point in time, like anytime soon. So the free time that I have is like hobby time. So it's kind of like whatever tickles my fancy. If I feel like doing some sculpture, I'm going to do some sculpture. If I feel like doing some comics, I'm going to do some comics. Painting, portraits, whatever. And really, I just go on the internet, and you can find whatever you want there. And if you're looking for something very specific, you just type it into Google and away you go. Mm-hmm. Or just read a book.
Wait, so a book? What is that?
I have this huge. You can't really see it behind me, but there's a big bookshelf, and I must have brought, I'd say about 75% of my books from home, like all my art books and stuff. Nice. And I don't lean on them as heavily as I used to, but they're still a real source of inspiration for creating stuff.
No, I agree, and yeah, it's amazing what you can find on the internet too. It's truly incredible, and it boggles the mind. Let alone someone's Tumblr feed that you view at your own risk sometimes.
Yeah, but you go down that rabbit hole, and sometimes it's really hard to get out of, because I find myself at work just clicking and clicking and clicking and going through links, and then you're like, oh, that's kind of spicy, and then it gets spicier and spicier, and you're like, yeah, I'm at the office. I probably shouldn't be looking at this stuff. And delete your history and clear the cache.
In what areas do you feel that you're most creative, and what areas do you find that you're least creative?
Like in terms of styles of art, or
styles of art, or I guess productivity.
Well, seeing as I have a toddler, it's very difficult to schedule time to do stuff. So it's like when I get a free block of time, I have to have the I guess the inspiration and the time have to sort of line up. So if those stars don't line up, I'm basically on the couch watching a hockey game, because really, like, your brain has to be in that mode where you're like, okay, I'm ready to create, and even if these hands don't cooperate, the brain is there and it's getting the process started at least. I can't really say as to like what I'm deficient in and what I'm excelling at. I guess I kind of go through phases in my art. So right now I'm in a phase where I'm doing everything kind of really high contrast, comic booky, and now I'm starting to shift towards illustration and exploring textures and doing these things with more color and more depth, and that seems to be exciting for me right now. But like we were talking about earlier, I have to do stuff that produces tangible results quicker because I don't have a lot of time, and right now I just don't have the patience to like start an oil painting because I don't know when I'm going to come back to it. And when I come back to it, it's like, where did I leave off and what did I want to do? And then at that point, it's just like, well, let's just scrap it. It'll just sit on my shelf.
Let's see here. You know, being an artist, you know, we're always our toughest critics. That never fails.
Yeah, agreed.
But when do when you're finally working on something, when do you feel that it's actually finished?
Well, it's funny. I had a conversation with somebody about this the other day, about how artists tend to hang on to stuff way too long, and there's always that fear of not doing enough or overworking a piece, and you have to kind of find that middle ground where you're like, okay, I'm sort of satisfied with this, and I know I could probably do a little bit more, but if I do, I may end up wrecking it.
Yeah.
So I think once you reach that point where you've done so much that you look at the piece and kind of sit back and say, maybe I could do a little bit more. That's usually my tipping point. That's usually when I'll put it away, and then I'll come back to it maybe 2 or 3 days later, and then I'll have another assessment of it, and I'll look at it and say, is this something that I'm really comfortable putting out there and showing people? And if it's a yes, then away it goes, and I leave it at that. Sometimes, you bite the bullet and you say, no, I could probably do a little bit more work on it, and you think, maybe I wrecked it or whatever. But if the regular person has a look at it and says, wow, that's fantastic, I love it, make more of it, and your artist pals are like, wow, you did a really, really good job, and they don't nitpick it to death, I think you've done enough. And then you can just leave it and don't bother coming back to it, and just let that one go and take that burst of creativity that you have and focus that energy somewhere else.
Good stuff. I like it. You mentioned about nitpicking and everything like that. Have you ever created something where, like Bob Ross, a happy accident or a creative mistake occurs and turns out for the best?
All the time. I think every piece of work that I've done has some kind of happy accident where in my mind I expected it to go a certain way, and then as I'm rendering it, just experimenting and trying different things, because you can do that digitally. It's great to just okay, I'm going to throw a whole whack of texture at it, and I'm going to apply these effects to it, and I'm going to do these little tweaks to it. and we have the benefit of Control Z and undoing everything, right? You're like, no, this isn't working, and you can go backwards. Mm. And sometimes I like to work without that net and say, like, okay, I'm going to do this, and I'm going to flatten that file, I'm going to leave it, and I'm going to come back to it in a day. And if that layer still works for me, it's going to stay. And I would say about 99% of the time it stays. Mm. And most of the time they're happy accidents. It's like, I didn't expect it to turn out like that, and I'm really liking how it turned out, so I'm going to keep it.
Cool.
I think you sort of need that in order to, like that exploration is really, really important, and just, you know, having that ability to have a little bit of free fall. You know, I think it's one of those things that, you know, allows you to take creative risks. Because if you've done it once, you're like, yeah, you know what, I'm going to push it and I'm going to try it again. Sometimes it'll work, sometimes it doesn't.
Mm-hmm. It's funny. For me, I think this year was one of those epiphany moments where I was working on a painting and the perspective was wrong. It was too tight. It was just not working, you know. And I had one of my, you know, F it moments, and took a damn cloth, wiped it completely away, and because I mean I had a thick navy background, I had everything going, and it was just that change of color on it that kind of really changed my point of view of the actual thing, and it turned out really good actually.
Well, sometimes that's what you need. You need to like fail miserably at doing something to open up your eyes and say, like, you know what, I'm going to approach this a little bit differently. And especially when you're working with like media, like actual physical media, it's not as forgiving as digital, obviously. So if you don't have the experience and you haven't made those mistakes, you know, you sort of have to fall on your face and do stupid stuff and say, like, oh, you know, that was dumb. I'm just going to wipe the slate clean. I'm going to start all over again and see where I go. Or I'm going to try and plow through this mess and make it salvageable and then learn from that mistake, and that's going to be the painting that's going to sit at the very back of the gallery by the fire exit, you know, because it's like, yeah, you know, I didn't really hit it on that one, but, you know, you need those experiments in order to get better.
Speaking of experiments then, what do you fear the most about your own artwork?
What do I fear? It's not so much a fear in the actual artwork itself. I think it's just not being able to get it together. You know, some days where, you know, you're putting pencil to paper and nothing's coming to you, and that creativity just isn't flowing. That sort of stuff scares me when it's long term. And the mind is a funny thing, because when you're stressed out, sometimes you can produce the most wonderful pieces of art when you're under pressure, but other times it inhibits your talent because you're thinking too hard, you're doing too much, and that's what I fear the most is, you know, living a busy lifestyle like I do. When I get that free time, I'm like, yeah, I'm ready to create, and then I'm sitting in front of a blank screen for an hour. That's terrifying to me. It's not so much the actual artwork itself, it's the lack of the artwork that's frightening to me. And so far so good. I haven't really encountered that, maybe once or twice, and if I do, what I do, I just shut the computer off and I'll grab a sketchbook and just switch the medium up completely. You know, if you can't force something to come out, even if it's crap, then just move on. And try not to waste that creative, that jump, that desire to do something. Because, you know, if you get frustrated and say, you know, nothing's coming today, but I really, really want to create something, then do something different. Build something, you know, paint something, like anything other than what you're doing right now, and use that creativity and put it towards something tangible. Instead of just saying, screw it, fuck it, I'm done, and I'm going to go sit in front of the TV, because that does nothing. You'll just screw yourself later on. And then you set yourself up for failing even worse later on. If that happens again, you get even more frustrated because it's like, oh, I want to do all this stuff, but I can't get anything going. Screw it, I'm just going to leave it. I'm not even going to bother. So the next time you get that creative urge, you're just going to suppress it and say, like, no, because I've never got anything going the last 2 times. What makes me think I'm going to do it this time around?
Interesting.
Keep fighting.
fight the art.
Fight the art.
You know, you have a successful career. You have a wonderful family that's around you. You have, your fatherhood is just beginning for you here. So you're successful in many areas. But do you personally feel that you're actually successful?
You know what? I do. Everyone has these lofty goals of where they want to go in their life at the beginning of their career and stuff. And I was fortunate enough to get a really good job straight out of college. So in some ways I took it for granted, and in other ways I was really, really appreciative of it. And I think it wasn't until I was about maybe 4 or 5 years in working for the company that I'm working for that I started to figure out that, you know what, I'm okay with where I'm at in my life, and anything else beyond this is gravy. Like, I'm providing for my family. I have a wonderful wife. We're planning on having kids. We have a nice home. Parents are still healthy. Like, things in my life are good. So why try to complicate things and keep shooting for the moon and making things more frustrating for myself, and forgetting about what's going on right now and enjoying what's going on right now. And it's been like that for me, I kid you not, Kurt, for about 10 years. I'm so happy with everything that I've got right now, everything that I've accomplished. So everything that I'm doing now creatively is totally gravy. And so every piece of work that I put out, somebody doesn't like it. Oh well, someone doesn't like it, whatever, no big deal. It's not like I'm relying on this to create like a solid living for myself and my family, because then that's where that desperation sets in, where it's like, you're on the spot and now you got to make things happen. And I find a lot of people that are pursuing like freelance jobs or creative jobs, whether it's in comics or illustration or the fine arts, put way too much pressure on themselves because they worry about the finances, they're worried about putting a roof over their heads or their loved ones' heads, and that really punches a hole in creativity, because you're not relaxed and you're not free to think, good thoughts about what you want to do with your art. So, I guess in a roundabout way of answering your question, I'm really happy with where I'm at right now, and I think I've, even though I haven't achieved like, name success and got a name all over the internet and I'm known everywhere, I don't care. It's not that I'm not chasing that. It's not important to me. What's important to me is that I'm fulfilled creatively. So.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's good to hear, and it's all right. I'm just finishing up.
You got visitors.
Yeah, folks, parents, it's all good. I'm glad to hear that, truly, and I think that it's something that everyone strives for, and I'm glad that you found it early in your life and you still have it. So.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a matter of coming to that realization and accepting it, because a lot of people come to that realization where it's like, I think I've gone as far as I can go, and they just fight it tooth and nail. It's like, no, I want to be #1, or I want to be a Penny Arcade, or I want to be a successful artist. And okay, that's good. It's great to have those goals and stuff, but sit back and think. Is this realistic? Is that the only thing that's going to make you happy? And if so, then okay, keep going. But if not, just enjoy what you've got right now.
Good stuff. Is there anything that I haven't brought up that you'd like to let those that are watching this and listening to this know about that we haven't really touched on? I mean, Drezzworks.com is of course your website. If I didn't mention that at the beginning of the show.
Yeah, that's my my hub site is Drezzworks. So Drezz with 2 Z's or Z's for our American fans. Drezzworks.com. and that's basically my hub site. So everything that I do creatively sort of stems from that. I have an illustration site. I do a lot of portrait illustration in that, either noir style or Grand Theft Auto, like that type of comic booky style. And you can find that at avatarnoir.com. And I'm still doing El Cuervo. I'm still re-releasing stuff. It's kind of like a director's cut. And those pages come out daily, 5 days a week. And I'm just putting them out as quickly as I can get them assembled. And once I think there's like 250 or almost 300 pages worth of content there. So once that's all done and that story's finished, then I'm just going to archive it, leave the site up, and I'll be done with comics. Posting webcomics and moving on to other creative things. Yeah, I like the comics. Don't get me wrong, but I don't like the strict schedule. It's just, I can't afford the time to do the strict schedule. So.
But you set the schedule.
Yeah, I try. It's just toddlers have a funny way of eating your time. And my buddy, when I first had kids, my buddy calls me up and he congratulates me. He's like, being a father is so great. And he says, I'm going to give you one piece of advice. He's like, it sounds terrible, but it's true. Kids are energy vampires. They take everything away from you. They suck your livelihood, your hobbies, everything. He's like, but just enjoy everything that you've got, and eventually that time will come back around. And you're going to learn to work with what you have. And I keep remembering that. And so that's what I've been doing right now, is just I'm trying to be as happy as possible with whatever time I've got, whatever I'm doing, and whatever little time I have is, if I put it into something creative, then I'm going to give her 110%.
Nice. And a great attitude to have, and it can only get better. And I wish you all the best of everything that happens. And don't be a stranger. You got to come on more than a couple of years every so often.
It's funny too, because I was doing a few things and I was like, you know what? I wonder if I should hit Kurt up again for another interview. And I was like, well, there's lots of artists there that probably want to get on the show, and I've been on already, and I've been rambling about the stuff I've been doing. So why am I going to occupy a slot that can go to somebody else? But
come on, you should know me better than that. I need content.
Yeah, okay. All right. I'll hit you up next week.
So, you just want to get back into the TGT tournament again. That's what you're trying to do.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, you know what? I can't believe I did as well as I did. I was like, hey, I made it past 2 rounds. I was like, what happened here? For a comic that went sort of, on hiatus and wasn't really doing a whole heck of a lot, I think I did okay.
Well, I think just a quick side note. It's Alex Heberling from the Hughes and everything like that. She seems to she's figured out the trick. Find an interview every single year so she can be in the tournament every single year.
Yeah.
So it's like
she's got a nice little fan base too, and she's a good interview. So
she's a fun artist too. I happened to catch her at Umicon, the anime convention in Detroit. So I was like, "That's fancy meeting you here."
Yeah.
But I also got to see Mookie.
Right.
Michael and
Terciano,
Terciano, Mookie. But anyhow, I hate to say it here, Drezz, but it's that ends this particular episode of TGT and episode 366. And thanks so much for coming on the show.
Hey,
I really appreciate it.
Anytime, I appreciate it. I don't get to do these things very often. This is actually my first video interview, so.
Really? Woo! Awesome.
Yeah. You saw it here first, folks. TGT.
There's been many firsts on this show, and I'm glad we added one more to it there. So that's awesome. Well, of course, check out Drezz's work at Drezzworks.com, as well as the El Cuervo site, as well as everything that's attached to that particular hub, because he's an extremely talented, creative person. I almost wish we could have gone to the site as we were doing this talk off to see if I can figure out how to do that in the future shows. That should be interesting to see if Google Plus can actually do that. But So that ends. This is episode 8 of 42 of the TGT challenge for
good luck.
42 interviews in 6 weeks. Oh God. But our next interview is going to be with another comic creator. I seem to be stacking up in comic creators today for some reason. With a few film people sprung in. But we have Mike Hearn from the comic Walter the Wicked. So that's actually a pretty fun comic. It has a lot of interesting pop culture references and those aspects. So we'll be talking with him tomorrow and on episode 367. And of course, you can see and listen to this particular show as well as other shows of the past 600 episodes on iTunes just by searching Two Geeks Talking. That's the word two, not the number two. You can find this, of course, on youtube.com/TGT Media. And finally, if you want to help support TGT Media and, of course, Two Geeks Talking, go to our Patreon account, which is patreon.com/Two Geeks Talking. If you want to support us, $1 a month will help. Every little bit helps, as it is, when it comes to this particular podcast that's been running for 6 years with 600 plus episodes since 2008. All for you guys, because I care. But I want your money as well. No, I'm kidding. I care about you guys too. Thanks everyone for watching. Tune in next interview with another great, creative, and talented person on Two Geeks Talking.